Thank you so much for joining me this week. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Democrats pushing to grant TPS to Central American immigrants, in particular about granting TPS to people from Guatemala and expanding eligibility for those from El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Along with this, we'll be doing a quick summary of the status of President Biden's immigration policies 1 year into his presidency. We'll see which ones he has fulfilled, which ones are in the works, and what is still a disaster. My name is Andre Major, for those who don't speak Spanish. And like a lot of you, I'm an immigrant. My family and I came to this country back in the 80s, and we overstayed our visas. I like to tell people they gave us 6 months and we stayed 30 years. It's not exactly accurate, but everybody usually chuckles. We made every mistake an immigrant could make at least once. And that comes from living twice in Chile, twice in Israel, and twice in the US. We got scammed, we got ripped off, we wasted time and money. And even after getting our green cards, my father, my sister lost their green card, and I almost lost mine due to not knowing the law. I stayed outside the country longer than I should have. I came back, I filed for citizenship. I got it when I didn't really qualify, helped other family members to get it until they started denying our applications. So that's why I became an immigration attorney, to help others avoid the suffering my family went through. We are here to help 5,000 families in the next 5 years, and these videos are a way for us to do that. So let's begin our video of today with an initiative the Democrats are pushing that could bring good news for at least 2 million immigrants. There's over 11 million undocumented. We're only talking about 2 million. Again, that's at least something. Democrats in the US Senate are urging President Biden and his administration to allow immigrants from some Central American countries to prolong their stay and prevent deportation from the United States. The main argument for this to prevent them to return to their homes is natural disasters and crises safe return. In their request, they are pushing for President Biden to take executive action. It's actually not executive action. It's because Congress passed legislation creating temporary protective status, but the executive can choose who to give it to. And Congress is suggesting that the president give it to immigrants from Guatemala. At the same time, they want to expand eligibility for those from Honduras, Nicaragua, and El Salvador that already have TPS from many years ago. More than 30 Democrats, led by Senator Roberto Martinez, wrote to top administration officials calling on them to act after the failed push last year to pass immigration reform during Biden's first year in office. At the southern border, arrests reached record highs last year, mostly due to new arrivals of immigrants from Central America. Granting them TPS would allow them to stay in the country at the time of allow immigrants that were in the country at the time they designate to stay and work legally. This happens if their home countries have been affected by natural disasters, armed conflicts, or other events that prevent their safe return. These designations, which are issued by the Secretary of Homeland Security, last 6 to 18 months and can be renewed indefinitely. We've created a few videos where we go into more detail about what the TPS program is, which countries are currently under the program, and how it works. I will leave a link in the comments to these videos so you can check them out later on to get more information. The Democrats argue that severe damage caused by back-to-back hurricanes in the past year, combined with extreme drought conditions and the social and economic crises exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, support a grant of TPS. Currently, over 300,000 immigrants from TPS, Honduras, and Nicaragua already have TPS. And under this proposal, another 2 million immigrants from that region could be eligible for deportation relief. Of course, Republicans are opposed to this, arguing that extending TPS would encourage more illegal entries to the country. You know, basically the same argument they always make, that pretty much anything you do in immigration will encourage people to come here illegally because you're punishing bad behavior. The fact is, President can do this tomorrow if he chooses to. He doesn't need permission from Congress. TPS already exists, and the law says the Department of Homeland Security decides if conditions warrant granting TPS to that country. This would be a good temporary solution. It is better than DACA, but it doesn't help everyone. For example, what about immigrants from Mexico or Costa Rica or Brazil, for example, or from Syria or Afghanistan or Russia? Well, maybe not Russia, but you get my point. We're only talking about a narrow portion of the world that might that they're asking that should be granted TPS. They could very well consider larger groups. It helps some, but it doesn't help many. It's unfortunate. This is the best we can hope for in the next 3 years. Moving on to our second topic. President Biden took office a year ago, and one of the pillars of his agenda was to work on immigration reform and to reverse Trump-era immigration policies. When he first came into office, Biden promised to reverse President Donald Trump's restrictive immigration policies, but failed to deliver, disappointing liberals and overseeing a major border crisis that hurt his popularity. Biden struggled, for instance, to end Trump's Remain in Mexico program for asylum seekers, to end the practice of using pandemic public health authority to automatically expel illegal immigrants, and to resolve problems in Central America that prompt many to flee the United States. Now, 1 year into his presidency, his popularity is going down, and the public is starting to turn on him. His approval ratings on handling of immigration plummeted through his first year, dropping from 55% initially to 35% this month. He started strong, taking swift action to stop some of the most harmful and legally indefensible policies that Trump had. But as he took some steps forward, he also took some important steps backwards. Point is, he has not been consistent. Adding to this, conservatives are adamant about the policies Biden has enacted are negative and hurtful. Just after the Biden administration moved in, conservatives started moving to rescind some of President Trump's border policies and plans, like stopping billions of dollars worth of previously funded border wall construction, ordering a 100-day halt on deportations, and promising to debut an improved asylum system. But before he got too far easing border restrictions, the administration was met by an enormous increase in illegal immigration at the border. Some just coming right to the border and asking for asylum, and others being apprehended not at the border but trying to cross the border illegally. The full extent of illegal immigration south of the border is unknown, but the number of migrants who are caught or surrendered to the border is tracked. Before Biden took office, over the past decade, the number of arrests at the border ranged anywhere from 30,000 to 50,000 non-citizens encountered in a single month. Last March, 170,000 non-citizens were encountered at the southern border. Encounters have remained between 160,000 and 210,000 every month since March 2021. With these numbers rising, Biden's response to the situation started to create conflicts with the public, forcing the White House to spend its first few months focused on the border instead of steering sweeping immigration reforms through Congress. To respond to this, President Biden was forced to choose between maintaining Trump's policies, the same ones he vowed to rescind, or keep seeing a rise in immigration of the kind the GOP has predicted. What Biden did was to choose a little bit of both, managing to piss off both the Democrats and the Republicans at the same time. Congratulations, President Biden. One of the most hated of Trump's policies was the Remain in Mexico program, which required migrants who sought asylum at the southern border to remain in Mexico for months or years until they get their day in court. Biden ended it in June, only to see Supreme Court's decision put it back in place after lawsuits in Texas and Missouri. At first, this was taken as a clear signal of Biden's position and as one of the most noteworthy promises he kept. But after that, it was reinstated and expanded so that more migrants have the potential to be turned back than when the program was operating under Trump. Of course, this made immigration reform groups and liberals furious, as you can imagine. Another thing that happened was that Biden was pushed early on his first year by the same immigration advocacy groups to stop using that pandemic public health measure, Title 42, which mandated that Border Patrol agents turn all immigrants, or almost all immigrants, back to Mexico or their home country. All illegal crossers, not just those seeking asylum, would be turned away. Biden planned to end Title 42 as soon as the coronavirus was no longer a serious threat. But the spikes in cases continue, including the Delta and now the Omicron variants this past year, preventing him from doing so. Actually, they don't prevent him from doing so, but it's a convenient reason. Of the nearly 1.7 million encounters made by the Border Patrol in fiscal year 2021, more than 1 million people were turned away under Title 42, according to federal data. Biden also promised to reduce the use of immigration detention, as well as eliminate the use of facilities opened by companies that are for-profit as opposed to non-for-profit. Instead, his agency is expanding detention and signed more contracts with private prisons, reneging on those commitments. Now, with the pandemic still raging, the Biden administration continues to detain people unnecessarily in facilities that increase the risk of them contracting COVID and fails to provide vaccines and adequate protection for those detained. As of today, more than 32,000 cases of the coronavirus have been detected among people jailed at immigration and customs enforcement facilities nationwide since the start of the pandemic. Well, 32,000 may not be so many considering hundreds of thousands of people in the US that have gotten it. Those are just the ones that we know. However, the Biden administration did stop using ICE family residential centers to hold migrants before release. Instead, it relied on hotels and released people onto the streets, but rather than using ankle monitors to track adults, it gave some migrants cell phones to track them in a less invasive way. However, non-citizens released to the US to await future court dates must wait several years due to massive backlogs for the fewer than 500 immigration judges nationwide, and in most cases, they can't get work authorization for over a year. This is a problem the Biden administration needs to do more to address. Within the interior of the country, Biden has significantly reduced interior enforcement deportations. His order to halt deportations for 100 years was blocked in court almost right away, but on a positive note, he was very effective at reforming ICE by significantly limiting the categories of migrants subject to arrest and deportation, making many with criminal records, making many without criminal records ineligible for detention, meaning they're not a priority, so they're not going to be put into detention to be deported. Another promise that the Biden administration did follow through was to roll back a Trump rule that deemed immigrants who were poor a public charge. This rule was created based on the notion that they did not make enough money, or that because of circumstances like health or otherwise may need government assistance, and because they may need government assistance in the future, they shouldn't get a green card today. Taking down this rule was a step in the right direction. But when it comes to overhauling the immigration system through Congress, Biden hasn't done anything. The White House-backed Democrat bill, the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021, includes an earned roadmap to citizenship for 11 million non-U.S. citizens illegally residing in the country, and would drastically boost security at land, air, and seaports of entry on the border. $4 billion would be available over 4 years to address underlying reasons that people flee Central America for the U.S. southern border. The bill states it will improve the immigration courts, expand family case management programs, and reduce immigration court backlogs, which are now over 1.5 million. This bill has not made it through either the House or the Senate. What makes things worse is that even foreigners seeking to immigrate to the U.S. largely are having trouble doing so because of the backlogs. U.S. consulates and embassies overseas that are responsible for part of the visa screening process have remained closed, understaffed, or have simply not prioritized immigration matters, preventing immigrants and tourists seeking admission to the U.S. from being able to reunite with family or take a job here. Look, I get there's a lot of challenges the President Biden is handling, from the pandemic, people at the border, consulates closed, only have 50 Democratic senators when you need 60 to pass legislation. The challenges are real. However, a year in, we're not seeing much improvements anywhere. A little bit here, a little bit there. At least start with one, start working, make improvements, make changes, then move on somewhere else. But we can't continue the way that we are. And it is unfortunate. I really hope that the next 3 years will be a whole lot better than this past year. And that's how we arrived to the end of this video, folks. I hope you liked it and found value in the information that I share. If you have any questions about what we discussed, please reach out, put a comment, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, if we can't help you, we won't take your money. And if you have friends or family that could use this information, please share it with them. Like I always say, education is your best tool. Knowledge can make the difference between staying in the country and deportation. Thanks so much for watching. Be healthy and stay well.